Comparing how family life is now to how it was back in your day, when you were a child, how do they both compare?
First of all, thank you, Chima, for having me on your show. I think to put it in proper perspective, a lot has actually changed. A lot has evolved from back then to now. Sometimes I pride myself to say I'm a chip of the old block. Some people say I'm a bit of the old school person. But of course, looking at the way the family was then versus now, that's why I said a lot has evolved. Because you find that back then, family was a lot more extended. The house was a lot more fuller. So anytime you find maybe my brothers were going out to school, there was always somebody who was in the house, one cousin here, one aunt, and all of that. But you don't find all of that today because the family is a lot more clear now, and everybody's more like minding their business and things like that. So yes, all of those things.
How much should parents share in such an instance? Because a child can come to you with a question that you have probably not thought of. And even if you have thought of, you don't even know how to answer. You don't know where to start from. And you may also think that, okay, this is not what I want to ask. This is not what they should be doing. So how much do you think parents should share with their children?
That's actually a very, very good question, because allow me to share a story with you. I have 3 kids, a boy and 2 girls. Now, my second child is my first girl, and she is the talkative. Like, she would ask you questions, and you would literally look at her like, who gave her this question to ask me? And I recently had to deal with the issue of dying and going to heaven with her. She's 6. So, I mean, it's a long story, but I'll just try to cut it short. She comes back from school one day, and I noticed that she's really sad. She's not her usual self. She's very bubbly, and she's really down. And while eating, I noticed that tears were rolling down her eyes. And I'm like, why are you crying? And she goes, Mommy, you've got white hair on your hair. You are getting old. I said, yes, I'm getting old. And she says, that means you're going to die soon. I like,
from where to where?
Hold on. How are you go from 0 to 100? I'm like, well, yeah, I will die. And then the tears, intensified. And to cut the long story short, she was really, really scared of death. And she really didn't know how to deal with that. Prior to then, she was always the one who would run around when we were praying. And she used to tell me, oh, how can you tell me this? God listens to my prayer. She didn't believe in God. So I just took it to God and I said, God, look, I've tried my best. I've done everything I can. I've spoken to her. I've talked. I've scolded. I've done everything. It's not working. Please teach her who you are. And I just left it at that. And after that prayer, she had a death issue. And then I now taught her and said, look, God is the owner of our lives, and he will give life to you if you ask him, because you know that he has life and he gives it to you, so you ask. So I told my daughter, I said, your brother has 2 pencils, right? If you ask him for one, he would give you, right? She says yes. And I said, so that's it with God. And guess what? God actually listens to the prayers of children more than mommies. Guess what? My baby began to pray more than every other person in the house.
Hallelujah.
So Uju, I mean, of course, it's only when she's not in the mood, but now she prays for everybody not to die. Grandpa, grandma, other grandma, mommy, daddy. She calls everybody's name, and she now has a healthy relationship with God. And I always try to reinforce, that. So with everything that happens in the house, I tell her, look, we've got to pray about this. And when that is resolved, I relate it to, because we prayed. So yes, it's a bit tricky knowing how much information to give them, but you have to find a way to relate it to them according to their age. She was so scared of dying, and that's a really valid fear.
Yeah, it is.
It's a valid fear, but I had to bring it down to her level. And thank God it didn't go the other way, because I will still be dealing with child
fall out by now.
Yeah.
How were your own parents able to help shape your faith, and do you still use their methods now?
Okay, as it concerns faith, I told you then that I didn't have so much access to my father like I have with my sons now. So a lot of times it was more through my mother, and then of course she introduced God to me, she introduced Jesus Christ to me, and then of course the need that I had to be baptized. My father just felt like, okay, well, it was my decision and all of that, But if you ask me, bringing that again to what I'm doing today, to a large extent, I've actually also been able to instill that in my children. And then, of course, there's this thing. Maybe I'll digress a bit. What we there's what we call the talk that has to do with maybe the sexuality. Now, excuse me, because I have 2 boys, between my wife and I, we agreed that it wasn't something that she was going to handle. So she pushed that to me. The only thing we did was at what time or at what age should we do that? And so we actually agreed on 10. Now, good thing is they're both over 10. I mean, Elu is already going 15 and Kerry is going 12. So at 10 for each of them, we had that talk. But before then, we thought that, okay, with prayer and going to church, we try to use that to bring them, to say, this is the reason why we're doing this. And then, of course, going to catechism again also now help, because at the time they go to catechism and then they come back, the tendency is for us to ask, what have you learned? And then what I do again is to say, okay, when we sit down in church, because I like for us to sit together as a family, when we're going home, I'm trying to ask, when Father was giving his homily, what were the things you picked? And then how can you marry that to the things that you're doing? So I try to, which is why I'm saying that, of course, they should have full access, for example, because truth is, if they don't have full access, if they can't get all information from you, they'll probably get it somewhere else, So it's important that you allow them to be able to express themselves and to ask questions. So we brought that to a large extent as it concerns faith, but of course, we also give them that leeway to say, it's for you to be able to choose. But of course, this is right, this is wrong, and this is the way you're supposed to go. And then, of course, that's how we brought the bit of Jesus Christ and then, of course, of God into the mix. Yeah.
Awesome.